I was standing in the hallway outside my father's hospital room when I heard my sister laugh. Not the polite kind you use around strangers. The real one. The one that came out when she thought she'd won something. I'm Elena. I'm 31, unmarried, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the daughter my father called when his car made a strange noise or when he needed someone to pick up his prescriptions. I wasn't the successful one. That was always clear. My sister Vanessa had the career, the husband, the house with the marble countertops. I had a small apartment above a bakery and a job doing payroll for a logistics company. Forgettable work. Forgettable life. That's what I'd been told, anyway. Not in those exact words, but in the silences that followed when I spoke at family dinners, in the way my mother would redirect conversations back to Vanessa's accomplishments, in the way my father would nod absently when I mentioned anything about my day. The laugh came again, softer this time, followed by my mother's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was conspiratorial. Warm. I pressed my back against the wall, the cold paint seeping through my thin cardigan. My father had been in the ICU for 2 days following a stroke. Severe, the doctors said. Speech affected. Motor function compromised. I'd been there since the ambulance left, sleeping in the waiting room chairs, answering questions for nurses, signing forms. Vanessa had arrived that morning, hair perfect, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I should have knocked. I should have walked in. Instead, I stood there, listening. He's stable now, my mother was saying. But Dr. Patel said the recovery will be long. Maybe incomplete. So he'll need care, Vanessa said. It wasn't a question. Yes. A pause. I imagined my mother sitting in the chair by the window, the one I'd been sitting in for hours before Vanessa arrived, and gently suggested I go get some coffee. I'd left because I was tired. Because I didn't want to argue. Because it's what I always did. I've been thinking, Vanessa continued, her voice lower now, almost gentle. About the house. About everything. If Dad can't manage on his own anymore, it might be time to consider options. Options, my mother repeated. Assisted living. Or moving in with one of us. I have the space, obviously. And Richard's been doing well, we could handle the financial aspect if it came to that. Your father would hate a facility. I know. That's why I'm saying he could stay with us. We'd take care of him. A beat. It would be the responsible thing. And honestly, Mom, if something were to happen, we need to make sure everything is handled correctly. The house, the accounts, all of it. We can't have any confusion. Confusion. The word hung in the air like smoke. I knew what it meant. Confusion meant me. Confusion meant the possibility that I might have any claim, any say, any role in what happened next. I'd never thought much about inheritance before. My father wasn't wealthy, not in the way Vanessa's in-laws were wealthy, but he'd worked for 40 years as an engineer and saved carefully. The house was paid off. There were retirement accounts, life insurance. Enough to matter. Enough, I realized with a sick feeling in my stomach, to fight over. Elena's been here every day, my mother said, but her voice was uncertain, like she was testing the words rather than defending them. Of course she has. She doesn't have much else going on. The casual cruelty of it hit me harder than if she'd screamed it. My sister didn't hate me. She just didn't think I mattered. I was the backup daughter. The one who showed up because she had nothing better to do. I walked away then, quietly, my sneakers silent on the linoleum floor. I went to the vending machines and bought a coffee I didn't drink. I sat in the cafeteria for 20 minutes, staring at the steam rising from the cup, thinking about all the times I'd been in that hospital with my father. The kidney stone 3 years ago. The pneumonia the winter before that. The routine checkups where I'd driven him because my mother didn't like highway traffic. Vanessa had been busy. Always busy. Always important. When I came back, they were gone. A nurse told me they'd left to get lunch. My father was sleeping. I sat beside his bed and watched the monitors, the steady beep of his heart, the rise and fall of his chest. His face looked slack, unfamiliar. The left side drooped slightly. When his eyes opened, they were cloudy, confused. He looked at me for a long moment, and I wasn't sure if he knew who I was. "Dad," I said softly. "It's Elena. I'm here." His right hand moved, just slightly. I took it. His grip was weak, but present. "You're going to be okay," I told him, though I didn't know if that was true. He made a sound, something that might have been a word. I leaned closer. "Home," he managed. "Or something like it. You'll go home," I promised. "When you're ready." But even as I said it, I wondered whose home he'd be going to. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. I stayed. Vanessa visited. My mother floated between us, anxious and appeasing, never quite taking a side. The doctors said my father would need extensive rehabilitation, possibly months of it. He'd regained some speech, but it was slow, effortful. His right side was weak. He needed help with everything. Vanessa started bringing paperwork. "Just to be prepared," she explained, spreading documents across the small table in the family waiting room. Power of attorney. Healthcare directives. I watched her highlight sections, make notes in the margins in her precise handwriting. "Shouldn't we wait until Dad can weigh in on this?" I asked. She looked at me with something close to pity. "He can barely speak, Elena. Someone needs to make decisions. I can help. You don't have the bandwidth for this. You're already taking off work to be here. So are you. I work from home. I have flexibility." She said it like it was a kindness, like she was explaining something I was too simple to understand on my own. My mother nodded along, and I felt it again, that familiar erasure, the sense of being gently pushed aside for my own good. I went back to work the following Monday because I had to. Because unlike Vanessa, I didn't have the luxury of unlimited remote work days. I came to the hospital every evening, stayed until visiting hours ended. My father was moved to a rehabilitation facility. He recognized me now, most of the time. He'd try to talk, get frustrated when the words wouldn't come. I'd sit with him, read him the news, tell him about my day in a way I never had before. Small things. The traffic on the way over. A funny email from a coworker. He'd listen, and sometimes I thought I saw relief in his eyes, like my boring, ordinary life was a comfort. Something normal in all the chaos. Vanessa visited twice that week. She was coordinating with the care team, she said. Making sure everything was handled. She brought our mother both times, and afterward, I'd find notes in my father's room. Reminders about medications, therapy schedules, things the nurses had already told me. It felt like territorialism disguised as helpfulness. 3 weeks into my father's rehabilitation, Vanessa invited me to lunch. This should have been my first warning. We didn't do lunch. We did obligatory holiday dinners and birthday phone calls and the occasional text about our parents' needs. But she called me at work, her voice bright and casual, and suggested a place near the hospital. "We should talk," she said. "About Dad. About the plan going forward." I met her at a bistro with floor-to-ceiling windows and waiters in black aprons. She was already seated, scrolling through her phone, a glass of white wine in front of her. She ordered a salad. I ordered soup. We made small talk about the weather, about her daughter's soccer team, about nothing. Then she set down her fork and looked at me with an expression I'd seen before, the one she used when she was about to say something she'd rehearsed. "I've been talking to Richard about the situation with Dad," she began. "And we want you to know we're prepared to take him in. Full time. Once he's discharged from rehab." I stirred my soup, watching the vegetables swirl. "That's generous. We have the guest suite on the first floor. It's perfect for accessibility. And I can arrange for in-home care during the day while I'm working. Mom agrees it's the best option." "You've discussed this with Mom?" "Of course. She's been worried sick about what happens next. She can't take care of him alone, Elena. You know that." I did know that. My mother was 72, with arthritis in her hands and a stubborn refusal to admit she needed help with anything. She'd never manage my father's care on her own. "What about the house?" I asked. Vanessa took a sip of wine. "We'd need to sell it. To cover the care costs long term. It only makes sense. The real estate market is good right now, And honestly, Mom doesn't need all that space. We've found her a lovely senior community. Independent living, very nice. She'd have her own apartment, activities, meals provided if she wants them. I set down my spoon. You've been busy. I'm trying to be responsible. Someone has to plan for these things. And what about what Dad wants? Dad can barely communicate what he wants for breakfast, Elena. Her voice was still gentle, still patient, but there was steel underneath now. I know this is hard. I know you're attached to the house. But we have to be realistic. I wasn't attached to the house. I'd moved out at 23 and never looked back. But it was my father's house. The place he'd built a workshop in the garage, where he'd spent weekends refinishing furniture and fixing broken things. The place he'd told me, once, that he wanted to die in when the time came. Not in those words exactly. He'd said he never wanted to be a burden, never wanted to end up in some facility. He'd said home mattered. Have you asked him? I said. Asked him what? If he wants to sell the house. If he wants to live with you. Vanessa's smile thinned. He's not in a position to make those decisions right now. That's why we need to make them for him. We, I repeated. You keep saying we, but I don't remember being part of any of these conversations. You're welcome to be involved, Elena. That's why I'm talking to you now. But I need you to understand the reality here. I'm the one with the resources to take care of him. I'm the one with the stable situation. You can barely take care of yourself. It was the first time she'd said it plainly, without the cushion of concern or the pretense of sisterly protection. The truth, naked and sharp. I paid for my soup and left. She called after me, something about not being emotional, about being practical, but I was already out the door. That night I sat in my father's rehab room and watched him sleep. The left side of his face still drooped. His breathing was heavy, rhythmic. I thought about waking him up, trying to ask him what he wanted, but the words he might manage to say wouldn't hold up in any conversation that mattered. Vanessa would smile and nod and say he was confused, that stress affected stroke victims, that we had to do what was best regardless of what he thought he wanted in this vulnerable state. I stayed until the night nurse suggested I go home and get some rest. I drove back to my apartment and sat in the dark, thinking. The next day, I called the rehab center and asked to speak to my father's social worker. Her name was Diane, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a practical demeanor. I asked her what the process was for discharge planning, who got to make decisions, what my father's rights were. She explained everything patiently. My father would need to demonstrate he could manage basic tasks, or he'd need to have a care plan in place. If he had capacity, if he could understand and communicate his wishes, even limited ones, his preferences mattered. If there was disagreement among family members, things could get complicated. Messy. Has he expressed any preferences to you? Diane asked. He wants to go home, I said. His home. She nodded. That's common. But it's also common for it not to be feasible. What if it could be? She looked at me carefully. Do you have the means to support that? I didn't. Not the way Vanessa did. But I said, I'm working on it. I started doing research that night. What in-home care cost? What modifications might be needed for accessibility? What insurance covered? What it didn't? I made spreadsheets. I called agencies. I learned about Medicaid waivers and caregiver support programs and a dozen things I'd never thought about before. It would be tight. Very tight. I'd need to cut back my hours to be there in the evenings and mornings. I'd need to move in with him, at least temporarily. I'd need to coordinate with professionals, manage medications, handle emergencies. It would consume my life in a way Vanessa's plan never would consume hers, because she could afford to outsource everything while maintaining her distance. But it was possible. Just barely, it was possible. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. I visited my father every evening, helped him with his exercises, learned from the physical therapist how to support him when he stood, how to watch for signs of fatigue or distress. I asked questions constantly. I took notes. The staff started to recognize me, to include me in conversations about his progress. Vanessa came twice that week, both times with our mother. I'd leave when they arrived, claiming I had errands or work. I didn't want to argue. Not yet. I needed to have everything lined up first. My father was improving slowly. His speech was better, though still halting. He could stand with assistance, take a few steps with a walker. The right side of his body was responding to therapy. There was a team meeting scheduled for the following week to discuss discharge plans. Vanessa called me the night before the meeting. "I wanted to give you a heads up," she said. "We're moving forward with the plan we discussed. Richard's already talked to a real estate agent about listing the house. Mom's going to tour the senior community on Thursday. We've got everything arranged." My hand tightened on the phone. You can't sell the house without Dad's consent. Mom's on the deed too. She can make that decision. Does she want to? A pause. She wants what's best for Dad. We all do. "I'm coming to the meeting tomorrow," I said. "Obviously. We want your support in this, Elena. We're family." I hung up and sat very still, feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was colder than that. Clearer. The meeting was held in a small conference room at the rehab facility. Present, Diane the social worker, my father's physical therapist, his primary nurse, Vanessa, my mother, and me. My father was brought in and seated at the head of the table in his wheelchair, looking tired and weary. Diane started by reviewing his progress, which was good but incomplete. He'd need ongoing therapy, continued support, monitoring for complications. "The question now," she said, "is where that care happens." Vanessa leaned forward. "We've arranged for him to move in with my family. We have a fully accessible setup, and we'll be hiring professional caregivers to assist during the day." Diane nodded, making notes. "And Mr. Torres, how do you feel about that plan?" My father's eyes moved to Vanessa, then to me. He opened his mouth, struggled for a moment. "Home," he said. The word was thick, but clear enough. "You'll be very comfortable at our home, Dad," Vanessa said quickly. "We've thought of everything." "No." He shook his head, frustrated. "My home." The room went quiet. "Dad," Vanessa said, her voice still gentle but with an edge now. "Your home isn't equipped for your needs. It's not safe." He looked at me, really looked at me, and I understood what he was asking. I took a breath. What if it could be? Vanessa turned to me slowly, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm sorry, what?" "What if the house could be made safe for him?" I said. "What if there was a care plan in place that allowed him to stay in his own home?" My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Vanessa's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes went cold. "Elena, that's not realistic," she said. "The cost alone." "I've looked into it." I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying, set it on the table. In-home care through the county program, 4 hours a day. I'd be there mornings and evenings. Physical therapy can continue on an outpatient basis. We'd need a few modifications. Grab bars in the bathroom, a ramp for the front steps. Nothing major. Diane was looking at my folder with interest. Vanessa was looking at me like I'd grown a second head. "You'd be there mornings and evenings," she repeated. "You have a job, Elena." "I've talked to my supervisor. I can shift my hours, work from home twice a week. It's doable." "For how long?" "A week. A month. This isn't a temporary situation. Dad could need care for years." "I know. You can't even take care of yourself properly. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. You barely make ends meet. This is absurd." The therapist cleared her throat gently. "If I may, having family support can be very beneficial for recovery. Familiar surroundings, routine, these things matter." Vanessa didn't look at her. She was still staring at me. "And what about Mom? She can't handle this on her own." "I'll be there," I said. "She won't be on her own." My mother was twisting her hands in her lap, looking between us. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Vanessa's plan seems so organized." "This is organized," I said, opening the folder. I have schedules, contact information for the care agency, a list of the modifications needed and their costs. I have a physical therapist who's willing to do home visits. I've thought this through. Vanessa took the folder from my hands, flipped through it quickly, then set it down. This is a fantasy, Elena. You've made some phone calls and printed some papers and you think that's a plan. Do you have any idea what you'd actually be signing up for? The reality of it. Yes, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was. I do. She leaned back in her chair, reassessing. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more measured. I understand you want to help. I really do. But this isn't about what we want. It's about what's best for Dad. And the truth is, we have the resources to give him professional, consistent care in a safe environment. You're talking about cobbling together a part-time solution and hoping for the best. I'm talking about giving him what he wants. He doesn't know what he wants right now. He's not thinking clearly. I am, my father said. The words came out slowly, but firmly. Want. Home. Diane looked at him carefully. Mr. Torres, do you understand that staying in your home would require significant help? That you couldn't manage alone? He nodded. And you understand that Elena is offering to help provide that care? Another nod. His eyes found mine. There was something in them I hadn't seen in a long time. Maybe ever. Recognition. Trust. Then we need to consider this option seriously, Diane said, looking at Vanessa. Patient preference is an important factor in discharge planning. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Can we have a family discussion? Privately. Diane and the medical staff excused themselves. The door closed, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Vanessa turned to me, and the gentleness was gone entirely. What are you doing? She asked. Giving him a choice. You're manipulating him. You've been here every day, playing the devoted daughter, and now you're using that to, what? Prove something. Make yourself feel important. Vanessa, my mother said weakly. No, Mom. This is ridiculous. She can't handle this. She's going to get in over her head, and then what? We'll be right back here in 3 months, except Dad will have fallen or missed medications or something worse because Elena decided to play hero. I'm not playing anything, I said. Then what is this? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to position yourself as the primary caregiver so you can control everything. The house, the decisions, maybe even the finances. The accusation hung in the air, ugly and specific. Is that what you think this is about? I asked quietly. What else could it be about? You've never been involved before. Never taken initiative with anything. And suddenly you have a full care plan ready to go. You're not doing this for Dad. You're doing this because you finally found a way to matter. My father made a sound, tried to speak, but Vanessa was on a roll now. I've been the one handling everything for years. Every crisis, every decision, every time Mom and Dad needed something real. You showed up for the small stuff, the easy stuff, but I was the one they called when it mattered. And now you want to swoop in and play savior because you have nothing else going on in your life. That's enough, my mother said, but her voice was too soft, too uncertain. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and I saw it clearly for the first time. She wasn't angry that I couldn't handle this. She was angry that I might. You already decided, didn't you? I said. You and Mom. You decided you'd sell the house and move him in with you and that would be that. You didn't ask me because you didn't think you needed to. You didn't think I'd have anything to offer. Because you don't, Vanessa said. You have good intentions and a folder of phone numbers. That's not a plan. That's wishful thinking. Then let me try. And when you fail, when you realize you can't actually do this, what happens to Dad then? I won't fail. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You don't know that. You can't know that. Neither can you, I said. Your plan could fail too. He could hate living with you. He could get depressed. Stop trying in therapy. People need more than just professional care and accessible bathrooms. They need to feel like themselves. Like their life is still their life. Don't lecture me about what people need. I've been taking care of this family while you were doing payroll and living in your little bubble. I've earned the right to make this decision. It's not your decision to make, I said. It's his. We both looked at our father. He was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sad, maybe. Or just tired. Home, he said again. Then, with effort, Elena. My mother made a small sound, something between a sigh and a sob. Vanessa stood up. Fine. Do whatever you want. But when this falls apart, don't come crying to me. Don't expect me to clean up your mess. She left. The door closed hard behind her. My mother looked at me, her eyes watery. Are you sure about this, honey? It's so much responsibility. I'm sure. Vanessa's just worried. She doesn't mean to be harsh. I didn't respond to that. There was no point. I'll help however I can, my mother said, but we both knew what that meant. She'd be there, but she wouldn't stand up to Vanessa. She never had. The discharge plan moved forward. I met with Diane 3 more times, finalized everything, signed papers. The county care program approved my father for 20 hours a week of in-home support. I gave notice at my apartment, started packing. My supervisor agreed to let me work flexible hours for 6 months, with a review after that. Vanessa didn't call, didn't visit. My mother came once, bringing some of my father's clothes from the house, but she was nervous, distracted. She left quickly. I didn't care. I was too busy to care. There were medications to organize, equipment to order, appointments to schedule. The house needed work. I hired a handyman to install the grab bars and build a small ramp. I moved my father's bedroom downstairs to the den, set up a hospital bed, arranged everything so he could reach what he needed. The occupational therapist came to assess. She walked through the house, made suggestions, approved the setup. This could work, she said, and I felt something loosen in my chest. My father came home on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd taken the day off work. The transport van pulled up, and 2 attendants helped him out, guided him up the new ramp. He stood in the doorway, looking around like he wasn't sure this was real. Welcome home, Dad, I said. He nodded, and I thought I saw his eyes get wet. We settled into a routine. Morning care came at 8. I'd help him with breakfast, get him settled before I logged in for work. The aide would arrive at 10, help with exercises, bathing, medication. I'd work from the dining room table, taking breaks to check on him. Afternoon therapy 3 times a week. Evening was mine, dinner, TV, conversation when he felt up to it. It was exhausting. More exhausting than I'd anticipated. There were hard days when he was frustrated, when his words wouldn't come and he'd shut down, refuse to eat or cooperate. There were nights I fell asleep on the couch because I was too tired to walk upstairs to my old bedroom. There were moments I wondered if Vanessa had been right, if I'd taken on something I couldn't actually handle. But there were good days too. Days when he'd manage a full sentence, when he'd smile at something on the news, when the therapist would report real progress. Days when I'd find him looking at old photos, or sitting in his workshop just to be there, surrounded by his tools. 3 weeks in, my mother came by with groceries. She helped me put them away, moving quietly around the kitchen. He looks good, she said. Better than I expected. He's doing well. Vanessa asked how things were going. I told her you seemed to have it under control. I waited. She's having a hard time with this, my mother continued. She feels shut out. She shut herself out. I know. But she's still your sister. She still cares. I didn't say what I was thinking, that caring and controlling weren't the same thing.